25th, 2005, my life changed forever. I went to bed that night. My children were asleep. My police officer husband, Dan, was out doing what he loved, working the night shift in San Leandro, California. We had just celebrated my son's 15th birthday the day before, and our 6-year-old daughter was the happiest daddy's girl on earth. But at 1 a.m. that night, I got that knock on my door, and the news of my husband's death was delivered by 3 of our closest friends who were working with him that night, and my world was absolutely shattered. I went to bed thinking that tragedy wouldn't touch me, but I woke up to a much different and horrifying new reality. Before this happened, I thought I knew what public safety looked like. I thought that as long as our prisons were full, we were safe. I didn't really know who criminals were, but I was pretty sure they belonged locked in prison forever. And after Dan was killed, I knew I was right. When Irving Ramirez was convicted of Dan's murder, I begged the jury for the death penalty, and I got it. I begged for it out of anger and vengeance. I was out for blood. I hated Irving. But I also did it because I was told by many people that the death penalty would be the key to my healing. But that ended up not being true for me. When the joy of winning that verdict evaporated, the real misery set in, and I had no idea what to do. So for the next several years, as I searched for answers, I learned that our system routinely fails crime victims on almost every level, myself included, even though I got what I thought I wanted. I was beginning to give up hope that I would ever find the answer. And then I was introduced to Insight Prison Project, and they asked me to come and share my story with a group of women who were serving life sentences for murder. And I said yes, but I was terrified to go into that prison. I had no idea what to expect. I thought they were going to eat me alive. Until I met them and found that many of them were just like me. And I didn't expect to connect with those women the way that I did. I didn't expect to see myself in their stories. I didn't expect to cry with them the way that I did. And because of that experience, I learned that the key to my healing was in connecting with people who had committed a great deal of harm and were learning to find their own humanity. Because by that time, I'd lost mine. And looking back now, I think the thing most responsible for separating me from love and compassion, understanding and forgiveness was seeking my healing in the misery and death of another human being. It was really clear to me at that point that more suffering wasn't the answer, but what happened in that group, for me, that was the answer. Now, the work that the men and women do in IPP's Victim Offender Education Group is extraordinarily deep and powerful. It's about 1.5 years of really emotional work that explores the impact of their crime, what it looks like to truly be accountable for those actions, building empathy for victims, and then ultimately healing their own unresolved trauma. And this is really important because everybody that lives in prison today won't be there forever. Over 90% of them are going to go home at some point, and they're going to move in next door to someone. Now, that wouldn't scare me if I knew that they had been through a Vogue group or one of the other amazing programs that exist in this prison, because I really believe these programs deliver public safety. I know that this was true for me because watching people be transformed by this amazing work completely erased my need to see Irving die, and I never saw that coming. And if people would have told me 10 years ago that I would get involved with IPP and become a facilitator and come into prison every Saturday and work with a group of men serving life sentences and finding my own healing in the process, no way. I couldn't imagine that would ever be true, but here I am. That's right. I never thought I would have the opportunity to experience this level of emotional healing or to support the healing of others. I never thought that I would get to see people who were hardened by anger and fear and unresolved trauma heal and then become healers for others. It's been an absolutely amazing experience, and I'm so grateful. But it can't stop with me and the other volunteers in this prison who love this work. It's really sad that these programs are so rare outside of San Quentin, and we need to change that. But the way I see it, there are 3 distinct groups of people who have the most power to influence the way people come home from prison. And that's lawmakers, prison administrators, and society. And for lawmakers, I'm asking you to create smart justice policies that reduce incarceration and address the real drivers of crime, like poverty, addiction, and mental health issues, and unresolved trauma. We are so far beyond the tough on crime era that promised to deliver public safety and utterly failed. The voting public knows the system is broken, and we're ready for a new direction. And for prison administrators, I'd ask you to keep saying yes to programs like what Insight Prison Project brings and the other programs that are in this prison. Bring it to other prisons. Make it available. These programs help increase safety inside the prisons. They reduce prisoner on-staff violence, and they transform the lives of people on both sides of the prison walls. Keep saying yes to media who want to showcase the work being done and the lives being changed. That's necessary. People need to know what's going on in here. And I ask you to keep exploring ways to allow prisoners to reconnect with their families and to heal and become vectors of healing, not just for other prisoners, but for people like me who are victims of crime. Your decisions in here directly affect what happens out there. And lastly, to society, I ask that you set aside what you think you know about incarcerated people and just get curious. I'm not asking you to ignore the harm they've caused. I wouldn't do that. I'm asking you to be open to the possibility that people can and do change. I did. I ask you to remain open to the fact that redemption is possible. And lastly, I want to ask you to forgive, but not in the way that you might think. I'm asking that we allow the debt of formerly incarcerated people to be paid. And that's why we sent them to prison, right? We sent them to prison to pay their debt to us. The only problem with that is that it never actually happens. I didn't know that the stigma lasted forever until I met people who had done time in prison and are out now doing amazing work in the world. And then watching them be shut out and marginalized at every turn, no matter what they do. Felony convictions bar opportunities for safe housing, employment, mental health, trauma recovery services. And when we continuously throw barriers in front of people who are trying to take responsibility and become productive members of society, we set them up for failure. And then we all lose. I really believe that the goal of public safety can be achieved without tearing each other apart. But it's going to take all of us working together to undo that harm and to let that healing begin. We can do better, and we must. Thank you.